Hey guys, it's Bully Prevention Month, and you know what that means. And if you don't know what that means, it means I'm going to share a super personal story about something that happened to me last year. Stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? It's Confessions of a Doctorholic with Hafsa Slayman, and in today's episode I want to talk to you about something that really hurt my feelings last year. And I'm recording this episode because I want to turn a new leaf. I want you to give me advice so that it can help me and all of you to move forward, become better people, and prevent this bully culture. So last year, I did a couple of extra shifts in the emergency department because I found out that I just loved it. I didn't know what the patient's condition was, so it kept me thinking. Sometimes in the acute medicine department, they already had an inkling what the patient might have. So I noticed that I wasn't really thinking as much. So some of the doctors, they were like, do you want to learn? And obviously, since I'm a nerd, I was like, yeah, 100%. So they advised me to go to the emergency department. So before going there, I know some of you might be like, oh my God, why are you going into that much detail? But before going there, I took permission from the clinical lead of the hospital, the person in charge of the emergency department, and from the school. And I made sure that it wouldn't clash with my own rotations. And then after I got all those approvals, I went a step further. I knew a couple of final year medical students at the time. So I contacted one of them that looked a little bit more anxious. I contacted him and I was like, hey, just a heads up, I'm going to be in the emergency department. I am not trying to step on anyone's toes. I just want to look at the blood results and I want to look at the x-ray so that I can learn more. And he was like, oh my God, is anyone else coming as well? And I was like, no, don't worry. It's just going to be me. And as I said before, I don't want to take any procedures from you guys because I know you want to practice for F1 in the UK. So all I'm going to do is just look at lab results, look at the x-rays, look at you guys taking histories, but that's all. Anyway, he was like, okay, we'll see how it goes. Wasn't really a warm response, but it is what it is. I suppose this bloke thought that I was pissing on his territory. So I just kind of let it go. I didn't really think about it, to be completely honest. Like, this is me thinking in hindsight. So because I can't use names of people involved, just because they've moved on and I've moved on, and I'm just using this episode so that all of us can learn and prevent bully culture in hospitals. So I'm going to use names from Money Heist, okay? So we're going to call this particular person Berlin, okay? Berlin has a couple of other friends. I'm going to call them Tokyo and give me a name of a country, and Oslo. So initially it was okay. I just went before my placement, so I would just go there an hour before my placement. And then sometimes if I don't have heaps of homework or if the day's too short, I would continue in the RVO. On one particular day, I did not see any patients. I went an hour, so it was 8 to 9 a.m. My placements usually start at 9 at a different department. So from 8 to 9 a.m., I would check out the emergency department, see what patients were over there. And then from 9 onwards, I would be on internal med. Ward rounds would start at 10, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, 8 to 9, I was there. There weren't any patients. It was a low yield day, to be honest. So in internal med, we were just following up cases. It wasn't a particularly interesting day for me. I didn't have any homework later on. So I decided I would just go back. So I decided I would just check it out on my way out of the hospital because it passes by the emergency department. So I was heading out and I see the head of the emergency department. She's outside. She looks stressed. So I go up to her and I'm like, hey, are you okay? And then she was like, yeah, I'm fine. We just found out that one of the doctors was exposed to a Rona patient. And the final year medical students, so that's basically Berlin, Tokyo, and Oslo, they were exposed to him as well. And so I'm just a little bit stressed. I want everyone to get tested. So there's me thinking I was there at the department at 8 a.m. So I asked her, I'm like, okay, what about me? Like, do you want me to get tested as well? And she was like, no, I'm really stressed at the moment. I just want everyone to steer clear of the emergency department. I just want people who are meant to be here at the moment. And I'm going to get you tested tomorrow if that makes you feel uncomfortable. So I was like, it's better for me to get tested if that's an option because like, just in case, we want to keep everyone safe. And I messaged the doctors on the internal med department and whatever. Anyway, as I was walking out, Oslo and Berlin, they were at a counter trying to sort out their PCRs and whatever. So Berlin calls out to me and he's like, hey, Hafsa, you need to get tested. So I'm there and I'm like, what do you mean? And like, I don't know why. I think here's my problem, right? Sometimes when I'm nervous or sometimes when I'm a little bit stressed, sometimes I use humor as a coping mechanism. So I smiled and I was like, why is that? And I didn't really tell him that I've already spoken to the head of the ER department because it just didn't pop up in my head. And then literally that same second, Oslo is speaking to me and he's like, hey, do you have any symptoms? And then I was like, no, I don't get sick easily. I don't have any flu or anything like that. And that's what I mean by joking. That's all I said. I felt like Berlin was getting super pissed off. I thought he was just stressed. I didn't think it was like I was the one being targeted. And I feel like I do that regularly. Like I just why should I make the world about me? Like why should I feel like the victim in this situation? He was stressed. He needed to get tested and whatever. And this is at a distance, by the way. Like it wasn't like I was right next to them speaking. So Oslo was like to me, just head home. And then Berlin looked stressed. I was like, okay, listen, to ease your worries, I'm just going to go back to the head of ER and I'm going to ask her once again if I need to go to get tested. I go back to her and she's like, Hafsa, I told you, go home. We're going to get you tested tomorrow. At the moment, I just want to deal with these guys. And I was like, okay, I leg it. She also asked me if I was living alone, by the way. And I said, yeah, I'm living alone. I'm not going to be exposed to anyone. So I literally get into my studio apartment and that's when my phone connects to the internet and I look at my messages. And I get spammed on Instagram. And by spam, I mean multiple messages on Instagram. So I open it up and little do I know, it is Berlin texting me. It starts with, I am extremely disappointed in you. And I literally read this and I'm like literally WTF, right? And then I continue reading and it's like, I wasn't expecting this from you. You are a bad medical student. I was expecting you to get tested immediately. You're putting people at risk. You are a bad medical student. And I'll be honest, I have never in my life been called a bad medical student. So I was sitting on my couch crying. I called a mate and my mate was like, this bloke is an absolute wanker. Do not listen to him, don't anything. And okay, I said bloke. I'm not trying to say like it's a boys versus girls thing. It has nothing to do with any of that. I'm not pointing fingers at guys, by the way. So if any male person is listening to this episode, when I was younger, I was bullied by females. It has no gender, and I'm not trying to single out males or females, but I tried not to use it. But if I accidentally use it, just ignore any fingers pointed towards a certain gender of this person. Anyway, I'm here thinking this is a complete misunderstanding. So I text Berlin and I'm like, this is a complete misunderstanding. And then I told him, I'm like, sometimes when I feel nervous, I use humor. I'm thinking he was offended because I said, I don't get the flu often. And then he was like, you're still a medical student. You're supposed to be more responsible. It was so condescending. And I told him, I was like, well, I'm getting tested tomorrow morning. And he was like, well, I hope you do the right thing. And then I was like, listen, if you had so much to say to me, why didn't you just say it to me in person? And then he was like, I did. Who do you think made you go back to the head of the emergency department? And I was like, I went on my own. Anyway, I ignored him afterwards because I felt like it was a waste of breath. And even though I thought it was a misunderstanding, I thought he clearly made up his mind and went back the next morning. So this time, Tokyo was there and another person. I'm going to call this person Rio. Rio was super lovely, had really great chats with him. He's just a funny person. So this person was like, hey, we've got some procedures. We've got a heap of patients. If you want to do something, please go ahead. And I told this person, I was like, listen, you're a final year medical student. I absolutely don't mind. Just keep doing procedures. I still have the opportunity to try them next year as well. I just want to learn from you guys and I want to learn from being here. Anyway, Tokyo is giving me the stink eye and I'm trying to ignore it. I'm trying to think this has nothing to do with me. It's just that she woke up on the wrong side of her bed. And mind you, Tokyo and I used to be friends in the past. Makes it sound even more dramatic. But she gives me the stink eye. And then she's like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing any procedures. And I just kind of ignore that comment. Anyway, I head home and I get an essay from a completely different person. I'm going to call him Melbourne. I get this text. It was polite, but it was also kind of annoying, to be completely honest. And getting this message, I felt like the final year medical students were gossiping about me. which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. So Melbourne decided to go like, hey, I've heard that you went to the emergency department today. I don't think it's safe for you to be here. Rah, rah, rah. And I replied back politely. I was like, hello, Melbourne, thanks for your concern. However, I did take permission from the head of the hospital and also the head of the emergency department, and they said it was absolutely fine for me to continue. Oh, by the way, before I forget, that day, I did end up getting tested and I was negative. I mentioned that to Melbourne, and then Melbourne was like, I still don't reckon it's a great idea for you to be here. And part of me, the rebellious side, was like, I want to go and I want to show these people that they cannot bully me, they do not scare me, and I went through the right channels. It wasn't like I just randomly decided to rock up. And also, I'm trying to learn extra. I'm trying to become the best version of myself. I was thinking about it and then I was like, well, I don't want a full-blown World War III, so let me just let this slide. I avoided the emergency department for a while. I finished my placement and I was still apprehensive about going back. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh my God, they're gossiping about me. Oh my God. And I know it's not a cool thing for me to think about, but like, that's how I felt. I started avoiding these individuals. If I see them around the corridor, I would like turn right or left or like go in a completely different direction to avoid them because I felt super awkward and I felt quite insecure as well. And I just felt like they were gossiping about me. Anyway, about a couple months later, I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I went to my personal tutor and he's a surgeon. He's lovely, but he was busy. And I picked the worst time to speak to him. So I told him, hey, there was an incident that made me feel uncomfortable. And then he was like, okay, like let's schedule a time to talk about it later. And I just felt like he was too busy, so I didn't go back. And then I decided to go to the head of the emergency department. She was always lovely to me. I felt kind of dumb for like just kind of sort of like throwing her in the deep end, like asking her for permission and then just like not rocking up. So I went to her and asked for a moment and she was super lovely. She like immediately jumped in and she was like, hey, I haven't seen you in ages. Why haven't you come back? And then I told her, I was like, to be honest, I just felt a little uncomfortable. The final year medical students have made it clear that it's not safe for me to be around and I'm putting the patients at risk. So I decided to avoid the emergency department. And then she told me, she was like, yeah, but I gave you permission to be here. So why were you listening to anyone else? Just ignore all of them. Like you were learning, you were being an amazing student. Why would you listen to anyone else? And she had a point, but I just didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Like I didn't want to piss around and mark my territory. I was like, okay, if I can deal with this situation in a civil manner, then I would rather do that. Anyway, she tells me that the final year medical students have actually complained about me. And this is what pissed me off completely because no one came and spoke to me about it. Instead, I get this message that, oh, they complained about you, but I didn't take it anywhere because it was completely invalid. You followed my orders directly and you followed the nurse's orders. You didn't put anyone's life at risk. I was pissed. Pissed would be like understatement. I am a goody two shoes, or at least I'm goody two shoes as much as I possibly can be. So I've never had anyone lodge a complaint against me and it triggered me. So I head back to the library because at that point I deactivated my Instagram. It was prior to this whole incident. It was to help me study for the USMLE. And so I went to the library to study and nothing was going in. I was super pissed off and I was huffing and puffing. So one of my mates comes up to me and he's like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, well, I'm a little bit pissed off. Someone lodged a complaint about me. And so the head of the emergency department sort of indirectly pointed to Berlin. So I just kind of, I mean, I didn't know for sure, but that's what went in my head that, oh, like Berlin complained about me. So basically I tell this person, I'm like, I'm so mad. One of the students that was on the emergency department shift last month complained about me and I just feel extremely butthurt. And I was just so mad. Anyway, I let it go. And then a month later, Oslo calls me out of the library. And I'm just a bit like, WTF. And I started ignoring them completely. I was like, they complained about me. I do not want to see them again. I'm not going to run into them again. They're in the year above. I do not have to deal with them at all. And I can be civil, but I don't really need to interact with them. They were in the library. I didn't go. I'm usually the type of person to say, hi, how are you? Chat for a fair bit. But this time I was like, no, they don't deserve it. This is not happening. So Oslo calls me out of the library and I'm going to continue next time. I don't want this to be super long, but please let me know. What do you reckon so far? so far, have I reacted in the right way? I will let you know in the following episode how everything went down.